Hi, I'm Mia Yumanos, digital analyst. Today, we know that the technology revolution is here. Digital has changed the way we navigate our lives, navigate our cities, and some of us even find love. And ThinkPH is a conference where Rappler discusses the intersection of humanity, technology, and culture. And today with me is JP Palpalatok from Accenture, digital lead. He's one of our esteemed speakers, and we'll be talking about this very topic. So JP, you are not alone today.
Yes, I'm not. So I'm going to introduce my friend here now. Now, please.
Hi guys, welcome to the Manila Liquid Studio. I'd like to introduce my little friend over here. Hey Google, how are you feeling today?
I'm good. What can I do for you?
Okay, Google, what's on the agenda today?
Today, there was only one thing on your calendar. It started at 3 p.m. with the title ThinkPH Roundtable Summit.
Great, let's get started. This is going to be fun. Oh?
As you can see, now is actually an example of the different trends or technology waves that we have here that we will be discussing.
Okay, and how is Now used?
Actually,
which are its applications?
Yeah, so Now is actually a robot that was developed by a Japanese company, and we're using it to show how robotics and artificial intelligence can be used as an assistant, a personal assistant, a virtual assistant as well. It has AI or artificial intelligence inside it, machine learning, and it's able to speak different languages as well.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me where the best taco is in Manila?
We can try.
No, we can move on to the technology trends. But so Accenture has just completed their studies. Can you give us an overview of what the technology trends are for 2017?
Sure. So every year we publish a study called Accenture Technology Vision. For 2017, we are highlighting 5 trends. The trends are designing for humans, workforce marketplace, uncharted, and then AI is the new UI. Those are the 4 or 5 trends that we have.
Okay, what does it mean? AI is the new UI.
Well, artificial intelligence is the new user interface. As an example, Now here, and the Google Home here is something that you can actually talk naturally. The interaction is very natural. It's very simple, and that's the intent of the AI is the new UI. Mm-hmm. And when you talk about artificial intelligence, it's really imbibing machines and systems with human-like characteristics, something that can sense, comprehend, act, and learn as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what is the difference between AI and, say, like an algorithm?
Mm-hmm. So artificial intelligence really is an intent on building human-like characteristics. Mm-hmm. So in fact, it's a constellation of technologies and tools, from natural language processing to machine learning to expert systems, etc. And really the intent, of course, algorithm is inside machine learning, etc. But the intent is really providing the human-like characteristics as well.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I know that it's nice to have a robot or maybe have a her in your pocket, hence the movie, but what are some ways that we can see AI in our daily lives?
Yeah, actually I use it every day. One of my favorite applications is Spotify. So when you listen to music, and you select a particular track, it will provide a recommendation based on the data, based on your selection, based on your preferences. And the recommendation, the algorithm there says, okay, here are the types of music that you might like. You might like Vivaldi, or you might like, Bruno Mars. Mm-hmm. So that particular recommendation engine is something that you can see. You can also see it when you're using Google Maps or Waze, or in some cases in Facebook, when you do facial recognition. When you post a picture, the way it tags the people that are with you in that particular picture, that's actually image recognition and machine learning as well.
Okay, but what about robotics? Are there ways that we can see robotics in our daily lives?
Well, actually, in Japan, they're seeing it already. So if you go to Japan and you go into a SoftBank store, the assistant that will, that will meet you is a robot called Pepper. So the Pepper robot actually will tell you, where is the customer service assistant, where are the phones, and you may ask them several questions. Of course, you need to speak Japanese though.
Right, right. But it's a shopping assistant.
It's a
so it
shopping
helps you
assistant.
Get through and navigate the store.
Correct.
In a more efficient way, I'm
Correct.
assuming, and I would hope that that robot also knows the inventory.
Of course, it tells you the inventory, where to find them, what are the comparison between the, the phones.
Right, and it's a lot. I mean, I would imagine that it's a lot less frustrating.
Correct. I think
as a buyer.
it's more simple, more smart, more, the interaction is more frictionless in a sense.
I mean, what do you think having robotics and AI and all these different assistants will do to the workforce?
I think the intent really is having responsible AI. The thinking from Accenture is that artificial intelligence is meant to augment and expand the capabilities of people so that they become partners in the workforce. Some of the examples that we've seen, for example, in one of our clients here, we put Amelia as one example. They take the calls, and if she's not able to understand the question of the of the customer, she actually redirects to a human customer agent. So actually, it's like working together to enable a better experience for the customer.
And do you foresee other jobs being created as a result of this?
Yes, I think so. When we did a study, we came up with a recent study called AIQ, Artificial Intelligence Quotient. And one of the findings there is that there are 3 categories of jobs that will be coming up. One is what we call the trainer. You train the artificial intelligence so that they can do what they're supposed to do. The other one is an explainer, right? Interesting, right? Explainer, where that particular job is to go in front of the businesses explaining why AI is doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
So basically, more for transparency. And the third job is what we call sustainer. Is it responsible? Is it safe? Is it secure? Sustaining the artificial intelligence as well.
So the trainers, or sorry, the
trainers,
you said the trainer?
explainers, and sustainers.
Okay, the explainer to me almost seems like it's a new kind of translator, right? Because you can't show the code to every person. Is that what you mean?
The explainer, right?
Right.
So basically giving transparency, because artificial intelligence, one of the fears right now is that it's a black box, right?
Yeah.
So being able to explain why the decisions and what of the actions of the artificial intelligence is one of the things that the explainer will be doing for the business and business executives.
And what about the job making sure that AI is responsible?
Yes.
What does that mean?
It means that, understanding, so let's give an example here. Autonomous vehicle, right?
Okay.
So in terms of like autonomous vehicle, what is the decision point? Which one will you protect? Will you protect the pedestrian or the driver? Those particular logic, right, or that algorithm, will you crash the car so that you can protect the pedestrian? Or will you hit the pedestrian so to protect the driver? Some of those decisions needs to be made, and I think that's one of the things that needs to be focused on by the sustainers.
It could even introduce a whole new set of legislation or laws or lawyers to be making those decisions. I mean, really, you feel like one would need that.
Of course. Those are uniquely human jobs, actually.
So you're telling me that I should be teaching my kids to code at 5 and 2 years old?
Well, I'm teaching my kids to code. But that's one thing. But actually, one of the things that we also notice is that it's not just about, so when you talk about AI, there are 3 components that we need to look at. One is the design, the experience design. So how do you interact with the AI? The engineers, the coders, right? The people that build, those applications.
Right.
And of course, the machine learning, the data scientists, the people that creates the algorithms that provides the artificial intelligence. So I think each one of them puts something to the table and enables a better AI.
Right. And it's almost as though when data started to be introduced and all this digital exhaust was started to be analyzed, every industry had to level up its vocabulary for data.
Correct.
And now, we're getting into systems, Internet of Things, AI. It's almost as if every industry and all different kinds of professions that never used to now has to level up a bit of coding understanding as well. So that's a fascinating development. What are some other tech trends?
Yeah. The other trend is designing for humans,
Right.
which is really more about human-centric design, being able to put people and customers in the center of designing an application. The other point about designing for humans is about using the data that people are generating, the data that we are collecting from machines, to be able to provide very personalized experience for consumers. And I think that's one of the things that we are doing, using data to do a hyper-personalization. So instead of like groups of people, you target an individual,
Right.
using the data, using the experience, using their preferences and the like.
So, what are the best examples of this? Like, do you consider Amazon to be the best execution, or
I think
who's doing it?
Amazon is pretty good, very slick. I think just an example, there's one company called Betterment in the US. It's an investment company. And what they did is they studied the behavior of their investors, right? They were trying to understand when do they pull out of their investment. And normally that particular event occurs when there is volatility in the market. And what happens there is that they lose out. Instead of holding on to the investment, they have a knee-jerk reaction of like pulling out their investments. What Betterment did, studying the data, studying behavior, is they changed the interface of their site and their application, removing daily performance information there. Of course, managing the expectation of their customers, no? To make sure that they are able to achieve the goal of their customer, rather than trying to dissuade them from doing those knee-jerk reactions as well.
I really like that example because it's like, finance is not usually the industries that you expect to take advantage of new technologies or studying human behavior. And usually you expect it of entertainment or theme parks or sports, but not something like that. And it really shows that there's benefit to almost everyone. Yeah,
actually, another example, you talked about entertainment, right? So Accenture did an engagement with the Golden State Warriors. So we built an application using virtual reality, and the intent there is to provide fan experience, no? In terms of like immersing them. So this is a cardboard device. You wear it, and you can go at the back, to the locker rooms, to the basketball court, the interviews, so that you get an immersive experience, get a feel of that particular experience in being in Oracle Arena, so that you can invite them and get them to go to the arena in the games.
Yeah, I really imagine that increases a lot of demand. If you can virtually visit some place, then you definitely save your pennies. Correct. I'm going there. I'm going to San Francisco. What about some other companies? Like, what if you're not a service company or an entertainment company? What if you're just making widgets?
Well, I think that's the important thing, right? Every company will have a customer, right? And back to our discussion about using design thinking, understanding what's the customer, what's their problem, what's their pain point, and designing the application, whether it's a simple application or a complex application such as artificial intelligence or like predictive analytics. It's really about understanding what the problem that you're trying to solve and who are your customer. Right. And I think that's whether it's a widget company, I think there will be some application of what are the things that you can use, right? And I think designing for humans is centered around it.
Or maybe especially because you're a product company or you're a widget company, because you're trying to get it in the hands of somebody.
Correct. Right.
So I mean, all this design thinking. I mean, where's the talent going to come from? This technology talent, coding talent, UI thinking. Yeah.
So actually, at least from an Accenture perspective, the coding, we're getting that from the colleges, from the talent outside, and for user interface, we've seen a different kind of talents, more on the creative, the designers, right? And actually, we're finding that actually in the Philippines. We are very big in gaming and videos and etc. And I think that's where talent comes from, the creativity to create the visual design, the interaction design, and the like. So I think that's where we're going to get the talent as well.
Okay. There was another trend in the top 5 about workforce. Can you tell me about that?
Sure. It's called Workforce Marketplace. So that particular trend is about the rise of what we call the external talent platforms. In the past, the way we do work is we hire a person and we continue to pay that particular person, right? That's how it works. What we're seeing now is companies are leveraging freelancers, using crowdsourcing, internal and external crowd. So they're expanding the use of the workforce, and they're leveraging this external talent platforms as well. So here in the Philippines, as you probably know, it's very big that a lot of people are into freelancing, and in fact, there's one site called Racket.ph, very Filipino, Racket.
Okay.
and people can apply and they can match for jobs. Actually, there's this is something that different companies are already exploring. The use of crowdsourcing, crowd testing, crowd coding, and the like, as well as the use of freelancer to expand their talent pool. Open up creativity, open up the talent as well.
I haven't seen the site, but I imagine it also does a little bit of social control as well. I mean, like Uber drivers, there's a social control. You could introduce something where people are rated based on the project that they did. So
I think that's normally for like an external talent platform. That is normal. If you do something like a job for another company, you get ratings, right? You say, okay, whether you did a good job in this coding work or this creative work or this this particular task that is assigned to you.
It's kind of scary also. You can't just go in with a CV and sell yourself. You actually have this history of digital review. So really, it might even improve the workforce if everybody's knowing that they're kind of being watched. What are the constraints also for Philippines kind of getting there? I know that it's kind of a culture shift to think about having freelancers instead of having, I mean, you must have gone through this here even, going through freelancers versus having I have this resource, I know this resource is here.
Yeah. I think it's an adjustment, definitely. I mean, not knowing, the person, not interviewing him, not, having that particular control gives you some uncertainty. But some companies are already started looking at, crowdsourcing. It's actually the output rather than, having the control of that particular activity. So one example of that is Unilever, or actually it's Procter & Gamble. I think it's Procter & Gamble, where what they did is they use an external talent platform, and the result is actually it's better in terms of quality and speed, but also actually cheaper.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, right?
That's what one would predict.
Yes.
That's what you would predict. But until you know it, it's hard to know.
But it's really an adjustment because releasing control and trusting, and that's where I think the rating and the assessing of people is actually very important as well.
And I'm sure it doesn't all go perfectly.
Of course.
That so you have to create a kind of a fail-safe environment to say we're going to try this to see if we can get efficiencies and better work at the end of the day. One of the things that I found fascinating about that was there was 86% or something said that they were going to go into freelance, but then something like 75% said that they were having constraints, internal constraints. So there's two data points, they conflict with each other. So it'd be fascinating to see, it basically sounds like you have to take a leap of faith to test this out. So let's talk a little bit and shift into the fourth one, which is the workforce. Ecosystem.
Ecosystem.
Yes.
So ecosystem power plays is actually a trend that talks about moving beyond platforms. So last year, we talked about platform economy, right? And we talked about companies like Uber and Airbnb breaking the rules on how they deliver value and services to their customers. What we're saying this year is that the companies need to make a very important decision, right? Do they build their own platform, which in the past they were like scrambling to build their own platform, or do they partner with other companies as well? So one of the most strategic decisions a company needs to make is who do they partner with, who do they play with. That's the important thing, and I think that's very important because one of the things that it will open up the different capabilities and services through those partnerships. In fact, most companies are already doing that from an enterprise perspective. If you think about it, Mia, a company needs to decide who's the cloud provider that they will be using, which sales software they will be using, CRM software that they will be using.
Sure.
Different partners, different platforms as well. And what we're saying is that the selection of those partnership and alliances will define your success or not, or will limit it.
Well, yeah, I mean, definitely from on the operational side, we have to. We can't do everything ourselves.
Correct,
we can't, so we partner with a cloud, and you have this, and you have softwares and other partners. But, how does it manifest related to like the consumer?
Consumers, okay.
What are some examples?
Okay, so one example is, as I mentioned, General Motors making an investment in Lyft. So Lyft is a ride-sharing company in the U.S., right? They invested $500 million, right? So why did they invest in $500 million? I think you need to also look at what other investments they're making. One other investment is $1 billion investment in autonomous driving software. Then autonomous driving facility for testing, another investment. What's the benefit for Lyft? Of course, $500 million is definitely something that can help a startup like him. For General Motors, what do they get? They get actually access to the drivers of Lyft, right? And one of the programs that they came up with is they can sell GM at a special rate to Lyft drivers so that they can start driving, right? That's the model. But I think the longer term play for GM is that they want to have a fleet of autonomous ride-sharing cars in that particular vicinity, right? So that's something that is a long-term play.
Right. So GM, traditionally an automobile manufacturer, now becomes a fleet management and also consumer-facing transportation option.
Correct.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I think that's kind of segues into a little bit about the
Uncharted.
Like, I mean, is supply chain or the management of how things get delivered to a human being, I mean, what is it going to look like?
Well, it's going to be interesting. In fact, some of the industries that we're talking about, connected transportation, connected health, has not been defined yet. In fact, some of the rules and regulation around those industries are not existing. And that's the reason why we define it the uncharted, because the digital pioneers are going into uncharted territory.
Right.
And the responsibility of the digital pioneers is to define the rules, the regulations, etc. And a good example of that is Tesla, right? And Tesla is a car company. It's an electric car company, but it's not just an electric car company. It's now a power company because of the Powerwall. It's also a company that sells solar tiles.
Right.
It's now into space. It's now into like boring tunnels under the street of Los Angeles, I think, is what they're planning to do. So they're breaking rules, right? I mean, it's not breaking rules. They're not. The rules are not defined, and the digital pioneers need to be able to help define the rules and regulation.
Right.
And I think the uncharted is also related to making sure that when we define or design a system or an application, that we build those safeguards, the regulation and the rules. And that's also the reason why one technology that we are also looking at is blockchain, because you can embed the rules and regulation into the ledger.
Sure, sure. And that has, oh my gosh, do we have time to talk about blockchain? I mean, it really has a lot of applications. And we're thinking about it, we know of it as, it manifests as Bitcoin and fintech, but it has so many other applications, and it's very difficult to explain. Do you think you could?
I will try. It's actually a distributed ledger that everybody can, everybody has a copy of the ledger, and essentially, if you change one, everybody needs to make sure that that the change is effected. So it's really hard to change the ledger. In a sense.
Right. Which would have implications for accounting.
Correct.
Or record keeping. Anybody who's normally just checking.
Correct.
Because
before it was like centralized ledger. You'd make a change.
Right.
You can do that. But right now, because it's protected by multiple distributed ledger, you can protect the security of those records as well.
Right. And I mean, in a way, this underlying technologies that are coming out, like blockchain, like AI, it really feels like a traditional business model doesn't exist anymore. I mean, you can start out one way, you can start out with a business model, but it doesn't mean that just because you start in that business model that you have to stay.
Right.
What you're saying is looking, if you're going to go into uncharted territory, it's kind of looking forward and backward at what you can do to influence even your own environment.
Correct.
So
actually, in 2013, we already said this, that every business is a digital business. So every business needs to look at digital, the disruptions that are happening, the technology, to be able to leverage and use that to be able to service their customers, and of course, to take advantage of those technologies as well.
Right. Well, let's bring it back to present day for a second.
Sure.
And where are companies right now, and are they well positioned to take advantage of these technologies, both globally and in the Philippines?
Well, actually, I think the trends are relevant to companies, small, big, as well as global and local. What I'm seeing is that globally they're looking at all of these trends already, like from AI. Actually, AI, it seems like everybody seems to be looking at AI. Human-centric design and the designing for humans is something like a mantra that we have seen and heard, because using service design, human-centric design, that's something that companies would like to pursue. I think in terms of the size, the big companies will probably look into a lot of the trends. The important thing actually, and maybe I'll step back a little bit, the most important thing for a company to think about is understanding, one, who is their customer, who's the consumer, and second, what problem are they solving before they implement all of this trend. In fact, I think that's related to the design thinking process as well, right? Understanding the customer, solving the problem, and then using the technology to solve those problems as well.
And so you're saying if you can find a place in the journey where maybe an AI or a new technology will fit, that's sort of that should be the direction. Actually,
Mia, we have in our report in the site, there's a 100-day and 365-day journey, and it tells you what do you need to ask yourselves as a company. Where are you in terms of a company? Where do you want to go? Are there low-hanging fruits that you should pursue in terms of the digital trends or the technology trends?
Yeah, that's very important. What is the end of the journey at 365 days?
I think it's really trying to use the trends to influence the product, the consumer, the experience of the consumer. As we talked about, and maybe I'll talk about what is the theme of the Accenture Technology Vision. It's about technology by people, for people, which is really focusing on people first. And the intent is really designing applications that are really for people, designed to make it frictionless, make it more adaptive, more responsive. So that's the intent, to be able to help the companies satisfy their consumers and customers.
Right. I think that's very it's very visionary, because it does seem like in the early 2000s it was very tool platform. Yeah. There was like MySpace, Facebook, Friendster, if you remember that. All this like stuff just coming out, apps, and a lot of them just kind of fell to the wayside because they were not useful in a meaningful way. They were more entertaining or interesting.
Actually, last year, we introduced our People First agenda, which is really the technology vision team last year. And what we found is that people were having what we call digital culture shock last year. That's the finding, because they were adapting to the technology, right?
Right.
And it becomes harder for them to adapt and use the technology, and they were not leveraging it. What we're seeing this year is that for us to be leaders and to be able to pursue this particular vision of being technology by people, for people, we need to focus on making the technology adapt to us. Making sure that the interaction are more natural, using natural language processing, using interfaces and designing for humans, as mentioned.
Right. Well, thank you so much. This has been very insightful. I look forward to your talk on Saturday.
My pleasure.
Great. So again, JP will join us. He'll be one of our speakers at ThinkPH this Saturday at SMX. There are still tickets available, so if you want to learn more about technology, humanity, and culture, please join us. Tickets are available at rappler.com/thinkph.